It's 10 o'clock in the UK, 11 p.m. here in Rome. This is Sky News at 10, our top story tonight. History at the Vatican as Cardinal Robert Prevost becomes the first pope from the United States.
La pace sia con tutti voi.
Peace be with all of you.
The 69-year-old from Chicago, who spent decades in South America, was appointed to one of the church's top jobs by Pope Francis, and he's seen by many to be a reformer in the mould of his predecessor.
Also tonight, Sir Keir Starmer and Donald Trump talk up a UK-US trade deal announced in a remarkable televised phone call between the White House and the West Midlands. Pakistan and India exchange fire and accusations amid fears the two nuclear powers could be heading for another all-out confrontation. Plus,
the Allied victory being celebrated then, as now, was a result of unity between nations, races, religions, and ideologies.
the King follows in his grandfather's footsteps, addressing the nation on VE Day at the same time as King George VI, 80 years on. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30 right through to midnight.
Good evening. History was made behind me at the Vatican today with the election of the first Pope from the United States of America. Cardinal Robert Prevost will be known as Pope Leo XIV, something of a surprise choice. He's viewed as a reformer, much like Pope Francis, who appointed him to one of the church's top jobs 2 years ago. Addressing the crowds in St. Peter's Square, he outlined his vision for a church that builds bridges. Coming up, we'll find out what kind of leader Pope Leo might be for the world's 1.4 billion Catholics. But first, our Europe correspondent Siobhan Robbins reports on a remarkable day in Vatican City.
He arrived as a cardinal, but emerged as a pope. This is the moment the world saw the face of the new leader of the Catholic Church, stepping onto the balcony to the roar of the waiting crowd in St. Peter's Square. Cardinal Robert Prevost, the first American pope, the first Augustinian. With a simple gesture, he greeted the thousands gathered below. For some, the emotion of the day was overwhelming. And for a moment, the pontiff too looked overcome by the enormity of the moment. Before he offered his first message to the world as Pope Leo XIV.
Peace be with all of you.
A message of peace for some, perhaps an echo of another who stood on this balcony.
Fratelli, sorelle carissimi.
Brothers and sisters, dear brothers and sisters, this is the first greeting of Christ resurrected, the good pastor who gave life for the Lord.
Pope Francis, a man who also fought for the poor and vulnerable, the predecessor who Leo paid tribute to.
Di Papa Francesco.
And Pope Francis, in fact, was always courageous, and he blessed Rome. The Pope that blessed Rome gave this blessing to the world, to the whole world on that Easter morning.
The
announcement was the climax of a long day for watchers packed into Vatican City. Just over 24 hours after conclave started, the signal came that the 133 cardinals had picked a new pope. White smoke, and with that, the sign that the life of one cardinal has changed forever. He is now one of the most powerful men in the world, the leader of 1.4 billion Catholics.
We came to Rome for my birthday. It was yesterday, and I couldn't get any better gift as that.
I was actually taking a nap, and my roommate shook me and was like, my aunt texted me there's white smoke at the Vatican. We ran through the streets through all the people and got a good spot up here to get a good look at them.
The big reveal of who had been chosen would take a little longer. But then, finally, the doors of the balcony swung open and the remaining questions were answered.
Annuncio vobis gaudium magnum.
I announce to you with great joy.
Habemus papam.
We have a pope.
Eminentissimum ac reverendissimum dominum.
The most eminent and reverend Lord, Lord Robert Francis,
Sancte Romane Ecclesiae,
Cardinal of the Holy Roman Church, Prevost.
Qui sibi nomen imposuit Leonem decimum quartum.
Who takes to himself the name Leo XIV.
Leo, a papal name that historically signifies strength during a crisis, a moderate pope that some hoped would be a unifying force.
He spoke many times about Francis, so it's kind of a continuity. And it's also because he prayed for everybody, for all. This is a continuity also with Francis, with the spirit of the Pope Francis.
And that excitement would carry long into the night. As Rome celebrates its bishop.
Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti descendat super vos et maniat semper.
Leo, a pope of the new world, bringing promise of a new chapter for the Catholic Church. Siobhan Robbins, Sky News, Vatican City.
And Siobhan is still in St. Peter's Square. Wonderful scenes today, Siobhan. What's the mood in the square tonight?
The mood is still buzzing hours after that announcement. 110,000 people were packed in here, we're told by the authorities, to see Pope Leo take his first steps out into the balcony. And when we saw that white smoke earlier in the day, I have to say some people were really shocked. They were expecting it a few hours later. It came earlier than that. And then when he stepped out and they saw for the first time who he was, they'd heard his name. He wasn't a name that people had been speaking about, particularly in the run-up to this. Lots of people I've been speaking to thought that there was going to potentially be an Italian returning here, maybe an Asian pope, maybe even an African. No one had spoken about an American pope. So some in the crowd were simply shocked, but others were absolutely overjoyed. And as the evening's gone on, we've seen people walking around here, taking selfies, really just soaking up the moment. At one point, there was a Congo line of people singing USA, USA. So there certainly is jubilation for many here who came to see the Pope. And it's not just the religious. In the crowd were tourists, people wanting to be part of history. But for Pope Leo, the job starts right now, and the challenges he faces that he has to try to get to grips with include the ongoing investigations into sexual abuse in the Catholic Church, Vatican finances, and of course trying to bring Catholics around the world back together.
Siobhan, thank you very much indeed. Well, President Trump has congratulated the new Pope, calling his election a great honour for the US. Pope Leo hails from Chicago, but he spent decades in Peru, first as a missionary and then as an archbishop. As such, he's seen as perhaps the least American of the American cardinals. And in February, he shared an article on social media which disputed J.D. Vance's view of Christianity. Our US correspondent David Blevins has this report.
He was the dark horse candidate, appointed a cardinal bishop just 2 months ago, quietly rising to prominence in the days before the conclave. Many thought the cardinals would elect a European successor to the Argentinian Pope Francis. But they've turned again to the Americas, electing the first pope from the United States, much to the president's delight.
What greater honor could there be? And we were a little bit surprised, but very happy. But just a great, absolutely great honor.
69-year-old Robert Prevost holds American and Peruvian citizenship. Born in Chicago, the largest archdiocese in North America, he's head of the dicastery for bishops, overseeing the appointment of new bishops, and the Church's Pontifical Commission for Latin America, home to 40% of the world's Roman Catholics.
I've been a missionary my whole life, and I was working in Peru. But I am American, and I think I do have some insights into the church in the United States.
A centrist on key social issues, progressive like his predecessor in championing the marginalised.
I think what you see is what you get. I see what you saw over there, a man of, I think, a very gentle man, calm, collected, thoughtful. That's always the impression I've got.
He is not without controversy. Victims of clerical abuse accusing Robert Prevost, among others, of mishandling the issue. But the conclave has spoken and written a new chapter in history. Of the previous 266 popes, only 20 have served since America's Declaration of Independence. This nation, which leads the world in so many ways, has never led the Church. Until now, Pope Leo XIV steps onto the stage and into a new era. David Blevins, Sky News in Washington.
And Alistair Bruce is here with me. First thing to say, what a surprise.
Well, I think when the smoke came, it was a surprise. It was earlier than we were expecting it. When the name of the Cardinal, Robert Prevost, was read out, it was a surprise. And the papal name he chose of Leo XIV was itself a surprise. And in all of it, the crowd reacted with monumental enthusiasm. It was wonderful. The roar of their excitement was just, I mean, it almost knocked all the seagulls off.
Carried on the breeze.
It was this extraordinary feeling.
Yes.
And I think that there's a sense of enormous relief and hope and excitement and wishing him well. But my goodness, he's got a huge challenge ahead. And I would imagine he will need to spend much time in prayer and contemplation. It was quite moving to see him leave the Sistine Chapel after he'd been invested and going straight to the Pauline Chapel, where he had sat as one of the preparatory elector cardinals, just to spend time in prayer before he went out and was seen by the world.
You said something earlier that struck me. He's now going to be a lonely man, you said.
I think leadership is always lonely. I think, on the whole, a leader finds someone they can go and talk to, maybe even the person they're married to, or a very, very close friend. But I think it's very difficult if you're the Pope, because you're supposed to keep yourself a little bit separate and above the whole thing in order to try and keep your mind clear to lead. And in a sense, what he does have as a Christian is the capacity to commune with his God, which I'm sure will be a source of great reassurance to him throughout what is now for him the rest of his life. Until his heart ceases to beat, he will be in charge of the Roman Catholic Church and carry the burden of Supreme Pontiff. And his title comes from Ponte Fecit Maximus, bridge builder, the great bridge builder. And he kept referring to that in that very moving speech he read, the first time it's been read from a prepared statement, to the gathered masses and to the world who were watching. And I think he kept referring to the idea of being a bridge builder. And his motto on his coat of arms is, one who is seeking one. And it's very powerful, this idea of unity coming together, which he expressed with great enthusiasm.
What about the significance then for the Catholic Church, which clearly has its difficulties?
Well, it does, and the world has its difficulties. And I am certain that with the guidance that he will have had from the Cardinal's confidence, he will find a way to certainly lead into trying to deal with that. But Previous popes have set about trying to deal with that. So he will have to find a new way with the help of those who advise him. But, you know, the public will always judge him by that. But at the same time, he's got to try and lift the whole church, find its new direction, and make sure that he continues to be a presence and a voice of conscience in a world that is led by people who seek the interests of their own nations. He's trying to speak on behalf of a creator God and give at least guidance to the Catholic Church, but to the world in general.
Yeah, 20 seconds left. What a day to be here.
Absolutely thrilled to have been here. Third conclave, so third new Pope I've seen start, and he did it with great enthusiasm, and I think he has a calm about him, and I look forward to learning about him more.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for your guidance throughout the last 48 hours, Alistair. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Steve.
So there we are on an historic day. Let's go back to Gillian in London.
Mark, thank you. The Prime Minister has hailed the US-UK trade agreement announced in a remarkable televised phone call with President Trump this afternoon. Tariffs on British cars and steel will be cut, and American farmers will get new access to UK markets. Sir Keir Starmer called it an historic day, but ministers have hinted they were forced to act to stave off job cuts in the car industry. And Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch says, in her words, Britain has been shafted. US tariffs on British cars will be cut from 27.5% to 10% for up to 100,000 cars every year. Tariffs will be scrapped altogether on steel and aluminium, as well as on ethanol, which is crucial to producing beer. There are also zero tariffs on beef, but the government insists that British food standards will not be weakened. And if the US does ever introduce tariffs on pharmaceuticals, the deal means British companies will get preferential treatment. But what's not in the deal? Well, the flat rate 10% tariff President Trump announced last month remains in place for all other products. Expected concessions on the UK's digital services tax have not materialised. And President Trump's rumoured tariffs on foreign films have not been ruled out. Our political editor, Beth Rigby, reports.
It never quite got there. Yeah. It did with this Prime Minister. So I want to just congratulate you.
Well, with this President, this Prime Minister, we've managed to achieve what many people have tried to achieve for many years.
This a special relationship, and these leaders claiming it as a win-win. Keir Starmer beamed into the Oval Office from a car plant in the West Midlands to sign off a US-UK trade deal.
This is now turning out, I think, really to be a great deal for both countries.
This the beginning of the backtrack from President Trump, whose announcement of sweeping global tariffs last month crashed the confidence of markets and voters in him.
It opens up a tremendous market for us, and it works out very well, very well. Until I looked at the numbers, I didn't realize this is a very conclusive deal, but we think we can grow it even from that. But this is a maxed out deal.
The president in need of an off-ramp and a prime minister happy to supply it, signing the first of what the US hopes will be a series of bilateral trade deals with countries around the world. For Jaguar Land Rover in the West Midlands, tariffs on cars cut from 27.5% to 10%. This production line has been paused, so this deal a lifeline. Elsewhere, tariffs slashed to zero on aluminium and steel, and a deal to sell more beef both sides of the Atlantic. This then a pretty narrow deal designed to limit the damage from Trump tariffs.
This is just the start. With the deal we've done today, we can say jobs saved, jobs won, not job done, because we're more ambitious for what the UK and the US can do together. So we're hammering out further details.
Back in February, when you did a press conference with Donald Trump in the White House, he said, we could end up with a real trade deal where tariffs wouldn't be necessary. We'll see. Those were Donald Trump's words. And you've come out, and yes, you have a concession on cars. You have a flat tariff still of 10%. Are you disappointed with that? Is this just the start?
We would like to go further in relation to tariffs, but I think it's really important that we've been able to get this deal over the line now, because in that way, we've been able to protect and save and enhance jobs right here, right now.
The PM wanted to come here to Jaguar Land Rover to tell shop workers on the floor that he'd done a better deal for them when it comes to car exports. But this isn't a comprehensive free trade deal. Things are still worse than they were before Donald Trump was elected to the White House. But it is some progress. And this was a Prime Minister who clearly felt his approach paid off. As one of his allies said to me, the cool heads deal behind closed doors, that approach has been vindicated today. So the PM will chalk this up as a win. But the real challenge for him is how he translates successes with, say, Donald Trump into votes and support on the doorstep.
It's a very special place and he's a special man.
The work Keir Starmer put into this first Oval Office meeting back in February now paying off. The Prime Minister, the first in line when it comes to a Trump trade deal, however thin. Managing to roll back some tariffs today, but so many unknowns as to where Trump might go next and how that could hit Starmer back home. Beth Rigby, Sky News, Solihull.
Well, our US correspondent James Matthews was in the Oval Office as Donald Trump and Sir Keir Starmer had that phone call. And afterwards, he got the first question to the US president.
Why Britain and why now? And you've described this deal as a full and comprehensive deal. And yet, we've just heard from Mr. Mandelson, it's the end of the beginning. Clearly, there's much more work still to do. With respect, are you overstating the reach and significance of this deal? Because you're a president who needs a result at a difficult time.
I think that it's a great deal for both parties. It's for us. We're opened up. I didn't know how closed it was. Quite closed, the market, as you know, the UK. And it opens up a tremendous market for us. And it works out very well. I actually, until I looked at the numbers, I didn't realize this is a very conclusive deal. But we think we can grow it even from that. But this is a maxed out deal, not like you said it. You said it really incorrectly. This is a maxed out deal that we're going to make bigger.
And James joins us now. James, the president didn't like the framing of your question much, that he's a president that needs a result at a difficult time.
Yeah, I beg to differ from Donald Trump, if I may. He spoke about an incorrect interpretation being the fact that he is a man who hasn't had a trade deal. The clock is ticking, 90-day pause. They're meeting the Chinese at the weekend in Switzerland, American representatives. That's the real result he is after. So, you know, continually he has been asked, where are the trade deals? Who has signed? And we've seen a very testy Donald Trump in recent days and weeks at that very question. Different mood today. He was all smiles, freewheeling. That news conference lasted more than an hour. Awkward at stages. At the start, we had Keir from based in the West Midlands on the phone. The British Prime Minister silent on the phone for something like 4 or 5 minutes, hanging on the telephone while the audience in the Oval Office hung on the big reveal from Donald Trump. So, yeah, the deal's been signed as much as it is. You know, but there is a long way to go, as Beth made clear in her report. Chlorinated chicken, for example, that headline issue, that's not going to go away. The Americans made it clear in this news conference today that the science is with them. Britain has bent over backwards to keep that off British dinner tables. Americans have made it clear in future discussions that's something that they will revisit. So clearly there was a celebratory mood today, I think, on both sides. The two old allies very much leaning on that. Victory Day, VE Day. Two old friends. It was a Keir-Donald conversation on the phone. Progress has been made, no doubt, but also there is a percentage loss. You know, for both sides. There was a board beside Donald Trump. Many figures were on it. Top right was the 10% baseline tariff. That remains the baseline bad news for the UK.
James, thank you very much. Well, both Sir Keir Starmer and Donald Trump have hailed the new trade deal as a win for their respective countries, and they both have clear political reasons to do so. But what are the economic realities of this agreement? And will one country benefit at the expense of the other? Our economics and data editor, Ed Conway, has been digging into the details.
The storm over tariffs has cast a long shadow over UK industry, hitting business confidence, undermining investment. But now, for the first time in months, a breakthrough. Britain's trade agreement with America welcomed by the Bank of England. Fresh from cutting interest rates, the governor said it could help turn the economic tide.
Well, I'd say I think it is good news that the UK and the US have a trade agreement. My message to the people who've done it is, well, congratulations. I mean, I know it's been a lot of work, a lot of intense effort. It's effort that was well worth it, put it that way. I hope it gives a message of greater confidence in the world trading system, that we can start to sort of build it up and build it back. Because I'm a great believer in the benefits of trade.
Do you think people will notice it?
Well, I think they will notice that it's happened. I hope that it's the first, in a sense, it sort of paves the way, if you like, into a lot more of this to come.
Read between the lines, though, and the message is this agreement itself might not make that much economic difference, which is borne out when you actually look at the numbers. So how much of the UK exports to the US get to escape all of the tariffs? Well, this is showing you all of the stuff we exported to the US over the last 5 years, £273 billion worth. Of that, look, cars, it's over there. It's just under £30 billion. So that's the single biggest chunk, and that obviously does benefit from this. Then you've got steel and aluminium. You can see it's a lot smaller, but nonetheless not insubstantial. Jet engines, so Rolls-Royce jet engines, they will escape some of the tariffs, some of that 0% tariffs, £17.3 billion. But something like beef, which has had so much attention, beef, it's tiny. It's only a few million. And then you've got other areas that haven't yet actually fully been negotiated, things like pharmaceuticals. That is a big deal. But even if you tot all of this stuff up and assume that it's not going to face those full tariffs, it still only comes to about £75 billion, which is just over a quarter of all of the UK exports to the US. Everything else, that still faces those 10% tariffs. In practice, British car makers will still be paying higher tariffs than they were last year. The difference is others will be paying even more.
Well, I think this is a matter of tremendous success, I think, for the UK government in being able to get a deal so quickly, and clearly there is a long queue, one that, for our case, supports the automotive sector. So there's a tremendous amount of, I think, relief in the sector, first and foremost. And I think this is a building block to develop, a closer relationship and deliver the economic growth that both sides want for the future.
For farmers, it's a mixed bag. More access to the US market, but also more competition from the American agricultural machine. So far, though, the UK agreement is only half a deal. Much of it, notably the part on pharmaceuticals, has yet to be finalised. Still, there's a bigger lesson here. The White House isn't just set on waging trade war. It can also make trade peace. This agreement's the beginning of a new chapter in a tempestuous presidency. Ed Conway, Sky News.
India and Pakistan have exchanged tit-for-tat strikes across their borders today amid fears of a much larger escalation. Pakistan's military claims 4 of its soldiers were injured by Indian drones last night. India, meanwhile, claims it was retaliating against attacks launched by Pakistan. Neville Lazarus reports.
2 neighbours trading blame, accusations and military strikes. Reports that Pakistan shot down Indian drones and that Pakistan sent missiles across the border to India could not be verified. This gaping hole in the home of Faizan Ali in Karachi, the collateral damage of heightened tensions.
Something hit my place. Some say it was drone and some say something else. It hit my house and broke my rooftop. Everything became dark below.
In cities across Pakistan, loud bangs were heard, and explosions at an airfield in Lahore created panic and uncertainty.
I heard noises of the bombs for about 30 to 45 minutes. Loud bomb noises have been occurring, not just a little, quite a lot of firing's been taking place here. First this morning there were 2 drones, and after that they dropped 3 more. We've seen them coming in all morning and we heard the impacts from the loud noises.
More damage from a drone at the cricket stadium in fortified Rawalpindi. Thousands of spectators had been due to attend a match here. As night fell, Pakistan targeted towns in the Jammu region in Indian Kashmir. Blackouts are now in place in some areas of Kashmir, Punjab and Rajasthan.
Any further action by Pakistan, some of which we are seeing today, is nothing but escalation by Pakistan now, once again, and will be responded to and is being responded to appropriately.
The violence is spiraling on both sides of the border, with no signs that either country is ready to back down. Neville Lazarus, Sky News, Delhi.
The King followed in his grandfather's footsteps tonight, marking VE Day by addressing the nation at the exact same time as George VI, 80 years ago. It was the culmination of a week of events to remember those who made the ultimate sacrifice, as our royal correspondent Rhiannon Mills reports.
He's seen it as his duty to lead this anniversary, but in a surprise to the crowd, the King took to the stage. At the very same moment, his grandfather, King George VI, addressed the nation 80 years ago.
We shall rededicate ourselves not only to the cause of freedom, but to renewing global commitments to restoring a just peace where there is war, to diplomacy and to the prevention of conflict. For, as my grandfather put it, we shall have failed, and the blood of our dearest will have flowed in vain if the victory which they died to win does not lead to a lasting peace.
He then remembered his mother, Queen Elizabeth, and how she danced in the streets that night in 1945.
I rather doubt I shall have the energy to sing until 2 a.m., let alone, for that matter, to lead you all in a giant conga from here back to Buckingham Palace.
80 years ago, London had erupted with celebrations. But for this anniversary, events had started with silence. At Westminster Abbey, the King representing the nation with this wreath. Prince William following in tribute to remember the Second World War generation. As other touches brought memories from the past, Winston Churchill's 10-year-old great-great-grandson, Alexander, lighting the VE Day candle of peace. The handing over of stories has been so central to this anniversary. With just over 70 veterans, the standout guests amongst all those dignitaries, determined to say they were here 80 years on. The royal family have made it a priority to try to make sure these events have been as special as possible for the veterans. As the King said, it is the least that we can do. As they've also tried to reinforce just how much we can and should learn from these men and women while we still have them with us. Their age means that future anniversaries will not be the same, and we may never see a generation like them again. When extraordinary people showed the most extraordinary bravery, pulling together for king and country. Rhiannon Mills, Sky News, at Westminster Abbey.
Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview. Tonight, we're joined by journalist and author Ian Dunt and former Conservative MP, now chair of the Women's Business Council, Mary McLeod. Amongst the stories we'll be discussing, this on the front of The Guardian about tonight's top story here on Sky News. Its headline, "Evil will not prevail. First US Pope vows to build bridges." Do stay with us for more. We'll be right back.